Then we'll go on to item 3, oral report of the general manager.
Okay. First off, I'd like to address anyone who has concerns about my use of a cell phone during the meetings. My cell phones, I'd like to assure you first that it's not a lack of interest in anything that you have to say. My cell phones both have note-taking apps on them, and I use them to make notes for myself. During our last meeting, I was in direct communication with staff regarding some of the public comments. For example, I asked Mark how Phyllis got the idea that we were only conducting hearings for dangerous dogs and that we were not doing barking dog cases. I also asked Mark if our officers had visited the rabbit case yet that day because I wanted to be able to give you an update. I am interested in what you have to say. Sometimes there is a simple misunderstanding that I can correct. Sometimes you offer very good ideas that we can learn from to help the animals. Sometimes I learn what information you need to be provided so you can offer thoughtful recommendations. I apologize if you had concerns, and I hope this addressed them. So the mayor's 2014-15 budget was released on Monday. Animal Services does have concerns about the proposed budget. We sort of work as a city family. We get to participate in the budget process with the mayor's staff. Then the budget comes out, and then we get to meet with the Budget and Finance Committee for the council. And it's a process. It's a whole process that goes on. We try to work together to see what we can do to do the best for our department. And, you know, I'm an advocate for this department, and I have been. If you look at the budgets that have been passed over the past few years, you'll see that we've gone in down staff and we've come out ahead on staff. And we've done very well, and we will continue to try to do that. We have some concerns about funding for food and medicine, for example. We're concerned that that we won't have the supplies that we need to take care of the number of animals that we have. We also have some concerns about our clerks. One of our shelters only has one clerk, and if she's sick or out, we can't open. So we have some very genuine concerns that we're dealing with. Our biggest concern of all is the spay-neuter funding. And that is the part of our presentation that took up the most of our report that was submitted. I believe that that report was probably filed by the clerk and is probably available publicly. You're welcome to go online and get it and read it. That's something that's available to anybody who wants to read it. The ASPCA did begin operations of the spay-neuter clinic here at this shelter on April the 15th. And for the community members, particularly the lady who spoke, we believe that bringing high-volume spay-neuter to South LA is going to be a lot of solution to the problem of loose dogs on the streets, dangerous dogs on the streets, and people who have not been able to get the services they need in the past. We're thrilled. Watch out, there will be a press release coming out talking about their groundbreaking or their ribbon cutting ceremony. So we're pretty excited about them.
Do we know, is that scheduled for May 5th?
That is their secret to be released.
I take that back. I'm sorry. If we could share the date, I thought this would be a good time to do it.
They asked me not to.
Okay.
They want to have their own press release, and they deserve it. I will take.
I gave the wrong date anyway, so.
Yeah. I will take 1 minute and try to just answer the question, and I may need Dove's help on this, on explaining the difference in the breeder's permit. In terms of our numbers, I'll let Sue Madsen back me on the numbers any day of the week, but I will explain to you a little bit about the breeder's permits as we understand it. If you have an exemption, which means that your dog is, you're listening very carefully, that means that your dog is registered with a registry that has multiple years of parents recorded, and you give us that information, then you can get an intact permit for $100. If you do not have that, and you still, for your own personal, religious, or whatever reasons, still want to have an intact dog, you can pay the additional $235, and for $335, you can have an intact, mixed, anything you want in the city. That's why there's a difference in the numbers. This isn't exactly what we had in mind, but it was what the city attorney felt was defensible, and we may be able to discuss this further. It's something we're looking into, but that's why the number of breeders' permits and the number of the ones who pay the higher fees are so different. The bullhook ordinance will be heard in council on Friday, April the 25th. If passed, that ordinance will go into effect in January of 2017. Commissioner Brent wanted an update on the volunteer liaison positions and their reemergence. The department did one round of volunteer liaisons interviews and selected three volunteer liaisons, and they opened the interviews again, and they're working on selecting volunteer liaisons so that there'll be one at each shelter. There are currently 3 now. Applications for the New Hope coordinators closed. This is an internal, part-time internal position for an animal care technician and doesn't include any pay differential. The department received 4 applicants, and the interviews will be in the next 2 weeks, and we hope to appoint 3 coordinators by May the 1st. They'll be stationed at the largest shelters, but will also offer assistance to the smaller neighboring shelters. I wanted to update you. Some of you have heard about this bunny case that we've been dealing with. Over the weekend, some of you know I got 63 emails regarding the case, and a few have trickled in since then. They're from local, national, and international origins. Many of them picked up a news article from Facebook or that was posted on Facebook, and that was the only information they have. I've responded to the emails, and several of the people have actually thanked me for the additional information and for the thoughtful approach of the department and our officers. When possible, we try to work with the people involved in a situation to achieve the best results for the animals. This case involves approximately 114 bunnies and 2 owners. One of the owners is terminally ill and has been unable to maintain the rabbits as well as he would like. Both owners are cooperative and are cleaning up their premise. Half of the bunnies were taken by a rescue early on, but on our investigation, we were there yesterday, unannounced. The bunnies have fresh water and food, and the owner wants to work with us to relinquish them. We are trying to take a few at a time because our bunny space is full at our shelters, and we do not want to kill any bunnies for lack of space. I don't think people understand. People ask, why don't you just go in and get them? They're in a terrible situation. Well, I don't think people understand what a hostile takeover would mean. If the department obtains a warrant to seize the bunnies, it could mean that the bunnies will have to be held for weeks or months until a court decides whether or not this constitutes animal cruelty. We are not convinced we could win an animal cruelty case at this point. Recently, we had to hold nearly 40 dogs for 10 months before we were allowed to start releasing them. In a similar case with cats, we negotiated the release of the cats and worked with rescues and the rescues who saved all 74 cats in a couple of months. We're trying to get a negotiated release. That's all we're trying to do here. We have been told that Layla of Bunny World took the 57 bunnies and that she has room to take the rest. I've asked her to work with us and take some of our already altered bunnies who are currently at our shelters to make room for us to take bunnies in from this case. This would allow us to get the bunnies and get them altered and give them medical care if our veterinarians determine that they need additional care. The department has a strict policy that we do not place unaltered rabbits with rescuers, in foster care, or in permanent homes until they have been neutered. We have great altered bunnies at our shelters, and the rescues can take them, Layla can take them, and help provide life-saving space we need for the remaining bunnies. On the 21st, on yesterday, the Animal Cruelty Task Force and East Valley officers responded unannounced to the property to conduct an inspection. They were prepared to impound if necessary. They counted 54 rabbits. All were housed separately except for 2 that were housed together. No baby rabbits were present. All had clean bowls of water, fresh food pellets, and fresh hay. All of the rabbits were active and alert. They saw no evidence of illness or urine staining on the feet. There was no overwhelming smell or excessive flies. There was an obvious problem of excessive feces at the bottom of the cages. The rabbits, however, could get away from the feces by getting on plastic mats or into plastic or metal boxes. Our officer left a pre-seizure notice and declaration of ownership with a specific due date. I'm not going to make the due date public as we are still trying to negotiate with the owners to surrender the rabbits, so we are not forced to hold them unnecessarily after they're altered. So that's what I can tell you today. I'm really excited about this. We have our first opportunity to outreach to the hearing impaired community. On May the 23rd, I'm going to be presenting a dog bite prevention workshop at the Greater Los Angeles Agency on Deafness. The acronym is GLAD. GLAD is a social service agency that serves the needs of deaf and hard of hearing community in the Los Angeles area. The department has wanted to engage this community for some time, and this is our first opportunity. When we had our board meeting at East Valley, some of you were able to take a tour of the shelter. If you recall, there is a fairly large and unused space in the middle of the customer lobby. I'm happy to report the General Services Department started to work on a new dog and cat habitat that will be built in this area. While demolishing the concrete benches, General Services found that there's more rebar in the slab than they had expected. Oh well. That's going to require more work than anticipated. So they're trying to work after hours to keep the project on schedule and to minimize the interference with daily operations. So if you happen to go out there and you notice a little jackhammering, that's just progress, I guess. There was another case that some of you heard about. It was the Harbor chicken case. You may remember that the chickens were housed in a temporary enclosure on the street that caused concern to some community members. The owner was attempting to build a larger chicken coop on the back of the property. We can only assume that these are the same chickens that were later reported loose in the streets. We don't know. We did send officers out and they were unable to catch the chickens. The case has been closed since the owner no longer has chickens on his property and the loose birds couldn't be caught. 2 days ago, Lieutenant Transow called Judy, a community member, to inquire about her report of raccoons attacking chickens in the area. She has not called back. Yesterday, officers followed up and inspected the locations where the chickens were originally kept. No violations were observed as no chickens were on the property, nor any signs of them being maintained at the property. Yesterday, the area was also patrolled for stray chickens. No chickens were observed. The officer spoke with a resident who stated that the one bird that was loose was picked up by a lady on Friday. So that's the end of that case. There is a cat situation that has been reported in the 90018 zip code that has gotten some attention and is a good example of how we proceed in a methodical manner and try to be fair to everyone. We received a complaint on the 12th that many sick cats are maintained at the property. The complainant alleged that there was a dog also at the property that was able to get out of the yard. On the 17th, an officer went to the location and observed 2 cats which appeared healthy, 2 dishes containing what appeared to be cat food, and 4 empty dishes were observed on the porch. No other animals were observed, and no one was home. There were no foul odors indicative of unsanitary conditions detected. A notice to comply was posted on the property advising of the cat limit, license requirements, sterility requirements, and rabies requirements, and advising the owner to contact the shelter. The field supervisor contacted a cat colony manager who does TNR at that location. This colony manager acknowledged witnessing a cat becoming ill over the past year and a half while she was at the property, well, it says while at the property, I don't know if it was she or he, to feed and trap. The colony manager also advised that she is allowed to trap the cats and feed them on the property by the residents, although she doesn't live there. She said she was unable to trap the sick cat until recently, and she took it to a veterinarian, and the cat was so sick by the time she could catch it that it did die while it was at the veterinarian's. We've had no contact from the property owner despite the notice to comply. An internet search revealed a possible work telephone number, and the number was called and a message was left. The private veterinarian was contacted and medical records requested. The investigation is still in the preliminary stages, and additional time is needed to determine if a crime was committed, and if so, by whom. Contact with the property owner for full inspection and interview is necessary. So this is just an example of what the officers have to go through on a daily basis to try to find out, A, is there a problem? B, is there a crime? Who do we charge? Who's guilty? So, but that's one of the cases that you're likely to hear something about. We did provide to the commissioners, and I think on the table for you, copies of our report back on services provided at the Northeast Valley Animal Shelter. This is primarily about the services that Best Friends offers. I urge you to read the report and let me know if you have any questions. I'm not going to go through that. It's an additional couple of pages. So we're not going to do that today. But anyway, you do have copies, and it's something that's worth taking a look at. Just from my highlights from the Wolfstat report, I'm not going to go through the full report, but I'm going to just mention a couple of things. The impounds are actually down by 8% fiscal year to date, even though we're seeing that the impounds are up by 6% for the month for kittens, and that probably relates to kitten season. And we're all holding our breath on what's going to happen on the impound numbers as kitten season becomes into her own. The life save rates for dogs and cats is up by 11% fiscal year to date to 72.87%, even though it's down 2% for the month. And I suspect that 2% for the month probably does have to do something with kitten season, but I don't know that. That's the licenses are up fiscal year to date, even though the month looks like it stayed level. So when you're reading the report, you look at the fiscal year to date compared to the fiscal year to date last year, and then we show month to month. And the reason we do that is when we have the meetings with the staff, we ask them, why are you doing more or less than you did the year before in the same month, in the same time? And this gives the staff an opportunity to look at their own house and see what they're doing and to offer suggestions to each other for, well, we did this and it worked. And, so that's the way we use these numbers. Spay and neuter surgeries by our in-house veterinarians is up 60% fiscal year to date and 27% for the month. All shelters, and we're trying our best to get the animals spayed and neutered because we know when people come to adopt, they want to take them home. Whether that's public or whether that's rescues, actually. Dog and cat shelter deaths are down by 26% fiscal year to date. That's so far 3 quarters into it. We have had 3,132 fewer shelter deaths with 3 months left till the end of the year. And they're down 3% for the month. So that's a number that is worth noting. Volunteer statistics, I call your attention to them. They're quite impressive and show the results of offering, I think they show the results of offering regular volunteer orientations at every shelter every month. That program is growing. We added onto the report spay neuter services by the contract vet, so we can make sure that we're getting as many shelter pets altered as possible. The shelter vets who have the clinics that are attached to the city shelters have an agreement that they will do a certain number of shelter animals for us. And so we're trying to monitor that and make that also transparent for you to monitor with us. Let's see. And it also gives you the copy of the breakdown by the shelters if you want to see. And that's what I was talking about, comparing it with the shelters when we have our monthly WOOFSTAT meeting. So that's what I have for tonight.
Thank you, Brenda. And one other statistic that just jumped out at me I have to comment on. 65 Public Record Act requests last month, and there are 20 working days in a month. And of course, we are obligated, and the department responds to those requests, or needs to respond to those requests, and the public is entitled to the materials that properly fall within the law that they are seeking. But that's a lot of work for an under-resourced department to respond to, and there's a lot of other important work that the department also needs to do. It just jumped out at me.
We have 4 public comments.
We have public comment after general.
We have public comment on anything they want to
Okay,
talk about.
that's great.
Okay.
2 minutes
Phyllis, and
each.
then Sue Taylor, and then Sue Madsen, and then Terry Austin. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Phyllis Doherty with the Animal Issues Movement.
2 minutes.
I want to comment on something Ms. Barnette said about the spay and neuter in South LA is going to cut down the attacks in the streets. I hope the lady is still here. It'll cut down on the numbers of animals, but there are other reasons for the attacks. The carelessness of people with their dogs, the types of dogs, and what they're training them to do. Dogs are a power weapon in a community. And I was born at 52nd and Van Ness, which you can walk to from here, and grew up in Echo Park. The streets are entirely different from probably where Miss Barnette grew up. There's a lot of people that want to attack. They use their dog to prove that I can kill your pet, I can hurt your child, and I can hurt you. If I don't want you to go out your door, you won't. And until we start addressing this in the streets, and we have officers that are capable of doing this. We have 19 people in administration. Get some of their bodies out on the streets and let them start enforcing the laws. Get some of these animal control officers that are just doing licensing in nice areas down here enforcing the laws. And we need administrative citations. Administrative citations were ready to go when Miss Barnette came here. The CAO announced the first budget session. Animal Services will start doing the first administrative citation program. Ms. Barnette did not know how to do it. Mr. Salazar does not know how to do it. Neither of them have been involved in law enforcement. I wrote that program. I went to all the different cities, got
30 seconds.
Their forms and their city attorney's reports on them so that we know how to do it. But you've got to have somebody that has an interest in keeping this city safe. We don't respond to dog bites. We don't respond to attacks. The police department do. By the time we get there, it's over. And we need to start keeping records. Very, very careful records when people call in about dog attacks. You have no records of that, and therefore, as far as we're concerned, it doesn't exist. It's a serious and dangerous problem. So please give these people some relief down here. We've had a wonderful meeting, and it hasn't covered their issues because the notice didn't get to them.
Sue Taylor again, Actors and Others for Animals. I'm not an accountant. I just play one when I come here. But I want to say when we always talking about percentages and all of these WOOF stats, I would like to say that we need to sort of distance ourselves from percentages and just look simply at the numbers. I mean, let's face it. If I placed 1 dog last year and I placed 2 dogs this year, I have a 100% better rate. But it's only 1 dog. So I think we need to worry about that. And the other thing on the wolf stats, on the licenses, since you've done such a nice job, and I mean you've put out all of these different kinds of licenses, could we possibly then, if the breeders' licenses are being divided in between those that have gotten an exemption because their animals are show dogs or whatever, can we have that? Can we know how many are show dogs and got an exemption for that reason, and how many actually are breeders? Because the truth of the matter is there's probably only about 2% of responsible breeders and 2% of accident breeding. The rest of them are breeding. And another one, I just need an answer to this, maybe you can tell me afterwards. I guess I'm dense too of where the best friends report. You mentioned something about there was a report here that we all got about best friends. I don't know where that is. So just somebody can help me with that. Thank you.
Sue Mattson. And then Terry.
I guess that makes me miney. An eeny and meeny. Sue Mattson, citizen and taxpayer, customer and volunteer. Just a quickie here. This is so great to have so many people here, and also to be hearing the bar raised for the conversation about statistics. We all need to just dig in and become a little more critical about what we're seeing and helpful. There are 3 points I want to make about wolf stats. First of all, the rates, and I agree with counts versus rates. The rates that you hear about the most is what's called live release rate. If you look at your whatever this thing is, the report, you get that. It's a simple math. It's live releases over live impounds. That's live release rate. But number 2, there's some issues with this way of calculating live release rates that you can't really get away from, but you need to be aware about it. In the industry, you have to look at any monthly calculation of live release as a very, very rough estimate of what's going on in the shelter. Live release rate isn't like, for example, we adopted out 78.31% of the dogs in the shelter. No, it's just we adopted out 78.31% of the animals that came in, because it's over live intake, not over the whole shelter population. Now, why this is relevant is because you can say, wow, it's 100% this month. We can stop what we're doing. You really can't do that. This particular rate is good for operations month to month, but it's not good for overall trends. We don't even have 3 years. You have to have 3 years for a trend. Finally, I'm just going to urge the same kind of participation to continue when, and my tough love is going to be, we need to not roll up to one rate to judge the performance for the shelter. We need to have different milestones for dogs, for cats, for rabbits, and others, and not look at one rate for the entire shelter.
Thank you, Sue.
Terry Austin, the Amanda Foundation, and yeah, I think the concern I keep hearing from everybody is that we keep saying, please look at these statistics as hard numbers, and then we hear percentages again. So that's my concern as well. Like, as far as volunteers go, I mean, listen, we do volunteer orientations once a month, and we get an enormous amount of people, but the amount of people who stick with volunteering falls off rapidly. It's like a health club. It's like, 1 out of 10 people come back more than 3 times. So like I say, you can't get too excited when you, look at the we did this month. It has to be over the time. My big concern is you're going to look at the same numbers this year within a couple of thousand over last year. Maybe it'll go down over a couple of thousand in terms of impounds, all right? Then look at where they're going. These statistics say, any way you slice them, that New Hope adoptions are down and the intake at the shelters are down, which accounts for a lot of sad morale in the shelters right now because they feel they're not getting the opportunity to do the adoptions they were doing before. So what I would like to see, and I'll ask Commission to ask for, with the bigger lump of animals that are going out with the Best Friends program, can we find out how many of those animals are being shipped out? Not that there's anything wrong with that. A lot of groups are doing it in other cities. It's going to be maxed out probably within the 2 years. Oregon can only fit so many dogs in it, okay? But if, let's say out of that 3,500, 2,500 are going other places, and maybe 1,000 or less
30 seconds.
are being adopted within the city, and if the New Hope adoptions are down and the shelter adoptions are down, we're not really very much ahead at all. which again, as I'm saying, that's why the spay neuter is so important. And I understand that you guys are not the ones who set that, asked for the cut, neither did the general manager. But you do have the opportunity to advocate both as a commission and personally to every single
Time.
councilman individually and the mayor that you feel it's important.